The storm hit Zareth 9 with a fury that no human settlement had ever endured. Jagged cliffs were sliced by bolts of violet lightning, and the wind carried the sharp scent of minerals torn from the rocks. Ethan Varick pressed his back against a towering crystalline formation, his thick jacket whipping against his frame as he squinted through the blinding flashes. Most humans would have retreated to their ships long ago, but Ethan thrived on challenge. He had spent years exploring dangerous worlds, surviving conditions others called lethal, and he trusted his instincts more than any cautionary rule. Ethan's eyes caught a glint in the distance, something moving unnaturally through the storm. At first he thought it was debris, perhaps a rock torn loose by the wind. But as he focused, he saw a shape, a craft, small and sleek, tumbling across the jagged cliffs like a leaf caught in a gale. Without hesitation, Ethan began running toward it, his boots crunching over jagged stones and fractured crystal. He had no idea who, or what, might be inside, but curiosity had always been his strongest guide. When he reached the crash site, he froze. Two figures were struggling to free themselves from the wreckage, their forms unlike any human he had ever seen. They were tall and slender, their skin smooth and pale, with eyes that glowed faintly in the storm's flickering light. Their hair shimmered in unusual colors, one silver like starlight, the other deep violet like the night sky. Even in the chaos of the storm, Ethan recognized something in their posture, regal grace, as though they were royalty. "Help us," one of them cried, her voice clear but laced with urgency. "They are coming." Ethan didn't ask questions. He dropped to his knees and began pulling debris away with his bare hands, ignoring the stinging cuts the sharp metal inflicted. When he finally freed them, he stood back and studied them quickly. "We need to move," he said, his voice steady. "This storm won't last long, but it's strong enough to make anyone die if they stay exposed." The taller of the two, with silver hair, nodded. "We are Princess Lyra and Princess Selene of the Orin Empire," she said. "Our ship was ambushed. The warlord Zareth seeks to claim our planet and its energy core. We escaped, but he will not stop." Ethan's brow furrowed. Humans had fought wars over much smaller things than entire planets, but he had never encountered interstellar royalty. Still, his decision was simple. These beings were in danger, and he was capable of helping. He had survived impossible situations before, and if he could save them, he would. He glanced toward the horizon where shadowy forms were already moving through the storm. Patrol ships, no doubt, hunting the princesses relentlessly. "We don't have time to debate titles," he said. "Come with me, follow my lead, and stay close." Using his knowledge of the terrain, Ethan led them through a maze of jagged cliffs and deep chasms. The storm roared around them, making each step treacherous, but he pressed on with a relentless pace. Occasionally, he would glance back, noting the faint glimmer of enemy sensors in the distance. The patrols were efficient, moving in patterns that suggested advanced AI guidance. No ordinary humans could have outsmarted them, but Ethan trusted his intuition. As they reached a sheltered canyon, Ethan paused. "We need a plan," he said, scanning the jagged walls. The canyon was narrow, with jagged crystal spikes that could be used as cover, but offered little protection against aerial attacks. His mind raced as he considered their options. Then he noticed something unusual. The crystals themselves were resonating faintly, humming in response to the storm's energy. An idea sparked. He gathered a few large shards and arranged them along the canyon floor, positioning them like a makeshift barrier. "Step behind me and stay low," he instructed. "We're going to try something they won't expect." Lyra and Selene exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed. Ethan took a deep breath and activated a small device he carried, one meant for scanning terrain but easily repurposed. The crystals responded, their hum intensifying until a sudden pulse shot outward, temporarily blinding the approaching patrol drones. The alien technology had not accounted for such unpredictable energy manipulation, and the drones wavered, giving them a brief window. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They sprinted further into the canyon, the storm now seeming almost like an ally, masking their movements with thunderous claps and lightning flashes. Ethan's heart pounded, but his mind remained razor-sharp, calculating every step, every possible trap. For several hours, they navigated the storm-swept cliffs, Ethan using his strength to climb precarious ledges and his wit to avoid collapsing rock formations. The princesses were amazed, not only at his endurance but at his resourcefulness. Humans had a reputation for being fragile compared to interstellar species, but Ethan defied every expectation. Finally, they reached a plateau overlooking a vast, shimmering lake of liquid crystal. Ethan stopped, crouching low. "We have to cross that," he said, pointing to the jagged ice-like surface. "But it's unstable. One wrong step and it could collapse." Lyra stepped forward, her glowing eyes meeting his. "We trust you," she said. "We have no other choice." Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of responsibility. He led them carefully, testing each step and finding the parts of the crystal lake that could hold their weight. The storm's wind threatened to throw them off balance, but Ethan's grip and guidance kept them steady. Every step was tense, every miscalculation potentially fatal, yet they moved forward with determination. Midway across the lake, a deep rumble shook the crystal surface. Ethan's heart sank. Patrol ships had found them again, their engines cutting through the storm like hunting beasts. The crystal beneath their feet began to crack. Thinking quickly, Ethan grabbed a nearby shard and used it to stabilize their path, creating a temporary bridge. Lyra gasped. "How are you doing that?" she asked. Ethan smiled briefly, though his focus never wavered. "Humans adapt, that's all," he said simply. "We find solutions." They made it across just as the first patrol ship fired a beam that shattered part of the crystal lake. Ethan pushed the princesses behind a jagged outcrop, shielding them from debris. The patrols circled, scanning for movement, and Ethan realized they couldn't run forever. They needed a stronger plan. He crouched beside the princesses, his mind racing. "Listen," he said. "We can't outrun them, but we can outsmart them. That ship formation out there relies on predictable patterns. If we create a disruption, we can force them into a mistake." Seleni's eyes brightened with hope. "We have a device that can interfere with their navigation," she said. "It's small, but it could give us a chance." Ethan nodded. "Then we use it, but we need a diversion." He glanced at the storm, then at the resonating crystals. An idea formed, bold and risky. He would use the storm, the crystals, and every ounce of human ingenuity to turn the environment against the patrols. Carefully, Ethan set the device on the edge of the plateau and connected it to a crystal shard. The device emitted a low hum, interacting with the natural energy of the storm. For a moment, nothing happened, and then a pulse shot outward, stronger than before. The patrol ships shuddered, their sensors scrambling as the resonance disrupted their navigation. "Now," Ethan shouted. They ran toward a hidden tunnel he had spotted earlier, one that led deep into the cliffs. The patrol ships veered, disoriented, unable to follow. Inside the tunnel, Ethan paused to catch his breath. The princesses looked at him with awe. You are remarkable," Lyra said. "We thought humans were weak, fragile, but you—" Ethan waved a hand. "We're not fragile. We're stubborn, clever, and willing to take risks." Their brief moment of relief was interrupted by a low, metallic voice echoing through the tunnel. "Ethan Varric," it said. The warlord Zareth's communication device had locked onto their location. "You cannot hide. The princesses will belong to me." Ethan's jaw tightened. Zareth was not just another adversary. He was a cunning strategist, armed with advanced AI and fleets far beyond anything humans had developed. Yet Ethan felt no fear, only determination. "We'll see about that," he muttered. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Ethan led, his senses alert for traps, for ambushes, for any way the warlord could strike. The The storm outside had less effect here, but its memory remained, reminding him of the urgency and danger. Hours passed, and they emerged into a vast cavern lit by glowing crystals, their luminescence soft but enough to reveal the path ahead. Ethan set up a small camp, using his survival skills to purify water from underground streams and prepare for the night. The princesses watched him, their expressions a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You humans are strange," Selene said quietly. "You rely on nothing but yourselves, and yet you accomplish what others cannot." Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe it's the stubbornness," he said. "Or maybe it's the belief that no problem is bigger than what a human can handle." As they settled in, a rumble shook the cavern. Ethan's eyes narrowed. From the shadows, the faint outline of a patrol ship's drone appeared, scanning for life signs. He stood ready to confront it, but then hesitated. He needed a plan, not just brute force. He whispered to the princesses, "Tomorrow we strike back. Tonight we survive. That is step one." Outside, the storm began to die down, but the threat remained. The warlord Zarath would not relent, and the princess's fate hung in the balance. Ethan's strength, courage, and cleverness would be tested like never before. But one thing was certain: the galaxy had underestimated humans, and he intended to prove them wrong. The cavern was silent now, save for the soft hum of crystals and the distant rumble of the storm. Ethan sat beside the princesses, scanning the shadows, planning the next move. The journey was far from over, and danger lurked at every turn, but he felt an unfamiliar certainty. Humanity could survive, adapt, and triumph, even against the most advanced alien forces. The night stretched on, and somewhere in the dark expanse of Zarath 9, the warlord Zarath observed from his distant ship, unaware that the human man he dismissed as weak was already planning a counterstrike that could change the fate of the Oran Empire. And in that moment, Ethan Varick felt a strange connection, not just to the princesses, but to the idea that a single human, armed with courage and intelligence, could alter the course of events that stretched across the stars. The cliffhanger loomed. The next day would demand brilliance, bravery, and the strength that only a human could provide. The cavern was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of the crystals embedded in its walls. Ethan Varick sat cross-legged, studying the small device the princesses had provided. Lyra and Selene watched him intently, their glowing eyes reflecting both fear and hope. Outside, Zarath 9's storm had faded, leaving the jagged cliffs exposed under the dim light of the planet's twin moons. The calm was temporary. Ethan knew Zarath would strike again, and soon. He spoke quietly. "We have one advantage they don't expect. They think humans are predictable, slow, and weak. They are wrong. If we act cleverly, we can turn their strength against them." Selene frowned. "But your methods, they are dangerous." "We have no experience with your kind of thinking. We rely on planning, technology, strategy. How can we trust instinct?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Instinct is experience in disguise. I've survived worlds where nothing else works. I've learned to turn danger into opportunity. Trust me, we have a chance." The princesses exchanged looks, then nodded. They had no choice. The alternative was certain capture. Ethan moved quickly, using his knowledge of the terrain to map a plan. The crystal cavern had natural tunnels that led deeper into the cliffs, offering hiding places and vantage points. If they could lure the patrol ships and Zarath's forces into the tunnels, the confined space would nullify the aliens' technological advantage. He needed to create a trap that relied on cunning rather than brute force. By nightfall, Ethan had prepared the cavern as best he could. He used crystal shards to form reflective surfaces, arranging them to confuse sensors. He rigged small devices that could amplify the natural vibrations of the crystals, producing pulses that could disorient enemy drones. Lyra and Selene assisted, carefully connecting wires and powering the devices with energy converters from their ship. Ethan studied their work. It's not perfect, but it's enough to force them into mistakes. We can't fight their fleet head-on, but we can control how they see us. The first wave came just before dawn. Patrol drones skittered into the entrance of the cavern, their sensors sweeping over every inch. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, silently signaling the princesses to stay low. When the drones detected the reflective crystal surfaces, they hesitated, their calculations confused by the refracted light. Ethan smiled. Now, he pressed a button on his device. A pulse shot through the cavern, vibrating the crystals in a frequency designed to disrupt navigation systems. The drones wavered, then collided with each other, sparking and malfunctioning. One by one, they tumbled uselessly to the cavern floor. Lyra and Selene gasped. "It worked," Selene whispered, her eyes wide. Ethan didn't smile. "We're just getting started," he said. "Zareth's main ship will be here soon and they will expect us to flee. We won't." Hours later, the flagship emerged over the cliffs, massive and imposing. Ethan had already prepared the next stage of his plan. The tunnels led to a cavern with a natural choke point, an arching stone formation above the path that could collapse if triggered carefully. He set explosive charges he had made from local minerals, small but sufficient to create a controlled collapse. As the flagship hovered, sensors scanning, Ethan led the princesses along the hidden tunnels. They moved silently, with careful precision. Zareth's voice crackled through their devices, taunting them. "Ethan Varick, you think you can outsmart me? You are human, you are weak, you cannot save them." Ethan did not respond. Words were unnecessary, his plan would speak for him. When they reached the choke point, Ethan signaled Lyra and Selene to prepare their device again. He adjusted the placement of the mineral charges, ensuring the collapse would block the passage but not harm them. The warlord's fleet, assuming the humans would flee in panic, began scanning every entrance. One of their ships detected slight energy fluctuations and aimed a probe into the tunnel. Ethan waited until it was deep enough, then triggered the charges. The arching stone collapsed with a deafening roar, sealing the tunnel and crushing the probe. The flagship's sensors went wild, unable to detect life inside the cavern. Ethan's plan was working exactly as he had imagined. From the shadows, Ethan whispered, "Stay close and follow my lead. We move when they are confused, not before." The princesses followed, trust in the humans' instincts overriding their fear. Ethan led them to an upper cavern, high above the patrols. From there, they could observe the ships without being seen. Ethan studied the enemy fleet. Zareth's ships were well coordinated but heavily reliant on AI. Human intuition, he thought, could defeat even the most advanced algorithm. He shared his plan with the princesses. "We will make them think we are in one place while we are actually somewhere else. Then we strike, targeting their central command." Lyra frowned. "But we have no weapons strong enough to destroy a flagship." Ethan shook his head. "We don't need to destroy it. Just confuse it, trap it. Intelligence and timing will do what firepower cannot." Using the reflective crystals and vibration pulses, Ethan created multiple illusions of movement, making it appear as though there were dozens of humans and aliens moving throughout the tunnels. The flagship's sensors detected movement everywhere, but could not distinguish reality from illusion. Drones were sent down each tunnel, only to be trapped or destroyed in miscalculations caused by Ethan's setup. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by distant sounds of metal and energy pulses. Ethan's calm, methodical thinking kept them safe. Lyra and Selene began to see the strength of humans, not just physical but mental. They had underestimated the species, assuming brute force and alien technology would dominate. Yet here they were, alive because of one man's determination and intelligence. Finally, Ethan saw the opening he had been waiting for. A direct path to the flagship's vulnerable systems lay ahead, accessible via an overlooked maintenance shaft. It was narrow, risky, but it could bypass the majority of the fleet's defenses. "We move now," he said. Step carefully, stay silent, and trust me." They entered the shaft, crawling silently, the walls vibrating slightly from the ongoing energy pulses below. Ethan led the way, mapping the path in his mind. When they reached the interior of the flagship, he paused. The air was recycled, metallic, and faintly humming with energy. He examined the control panels, noting the intricacy of Zareth's AI systems. Lyra stepped forward hesitantly. "Ethan, how do we stop them?" He smiled faintly. "We don't stop them, we make them stop themselves." Using the knowledge the princesses had provided about the AI, Ethan began overriding certain systems. He carefully inserted their device into a port, then manipulated the ship's power distribution. Lights flickered, alarms sounded, and the flagship's AI began to misinterpret data. Zareth's voice boomed through the ship. "What is happening? Identify the human intruder." Ethan did not answer. He worked quickly, rerouting critical energy systems, sending false signals, and exploiting the AI's over-reliance on logic. The flagship shuddered as energy surges misaligned, sending ships in the fleet into erratic movements. One by one, Zareth's patrols collided with each other or were forced to retreat, trapped by the chaotic but carefully orchestrated environment. Lyra and Selene watched in awe. You are extraordinary," Lyra whispered. "I have never seen a species so resourceful." Ethan nodded, focused on the final step. "Almost done. Hold on." He activated the last pulse from the device, creating a resonance through the flagship that temporarily disabled the AI's core guidance. The warlord's ship faltered, leaving it vulnerable to the crystal traps they had set earlier in the canyon. Outside, the collapse of the canyon and the pulses from the crystals forced the flagship into a precarious position. With careful timing, Ethan manipulated the remaining ships, guiding them into an energy corridor that trapped them against the cliffs. Zareth's fleet was immobilized, his AI systems overruled by human ingenuity and the unexpected use of environmental factors. The flagship shuddered, then powered down partially, unable to regain control. Ethan led the princesses out through a hidden exit, back to the surface of Zareth 9. The storm had fully subsided, leaving the twin moons casting a serene light over the jagged cliffs. Lyra and Selene turned to Ethan, their expressions a mixture of gratitude, amazement, and newfound respect. "You have done what we thought impossible," Selene said softly. "You saved us, and you changed the course of our world." Ethan shrugged modestly. "Humans are stronger than most believe. Strength isn't just muscle or weapons, it's intelligence, courage, and the will to act when others hesitate." The princesses nodded, their previous assumptions about humans shattered. They had come to Zareth 9 seeking refuge, expecting help but not expecting to witness the extraordinary resourcefulness of one man. "I owe you everything," Lyra said, her voice quiet but firm. "If there is ever a time we can repay you, you will have only to ask." Ethan shook his head. "No repayment needed. I did what anyone with the right determination could do. But if your people are willing to share knowledge and friendship, that is reward enough." Together, they returned to the remaining ships that had survived, ready to travel back to the Oran Empire. Ethan had proven something vital, not just to the princesses, but to the galaxy. Humans could adapt, survive, and outthink the most advanced forces. Strength was not measured only in power, but in ingenuity and bravery. As they lifted off the surface of Zareth 9, Ethan looked down at the jagged cliffs, the crystals still humming faintly in the twin moonlight. He felt a deep satisfaction. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but he had shown that even a single human could change the balance of interstellar power. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are more than a human. You are a force for hope in the galaxy." Ethan smiled. "I'm just a man doing what needs to be done. The real power is in all of us." As the flagship of the Oran Empire took them safely toward distant stars, the defeated warlord Zareth retreated into the void, nursing the first significant defeat of his career. Humans would remain underestimated, but Ethan had proven that courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness could rewrite the rules of the universe. And somewhere in the infinite expanse of stars, humans had earned a place of respect, a species that could survive the impossible, adapt to the unknown, and triumph when none expected them to. For Ethan Varick, the adventure was far from over. But for the moment, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that one strong human had changed the fate of alien princesses and reminded the galaxy that strength was more than weapons. It was will, intellect, and heart. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and humanity's story was only beginning.